Hey there, YouTubers. All right, so this video we're going to talk about the benchmark inside of Rise of the Tomb Raider and the different ones that I got using my i7 10700K with RX Vega 64 on a Z490 motherboard. Um, so I went in, messed around a little bit with the multipliers, and I'll show you what happened and how that affected the FPS. So inside of Rise of the Tomb Raider is right here a benchmark, and basically you click on that. It goes through 3 different scenes, and it gives you FPS for each, and then an overall. All right, so I won't bore you guys with that. We'll go back to what I wanted to show you. I'll try and do this somewhat quick. So, talked a little bit about the computer, Z490. The RAM's at 3067, I believe. We're also going to look at CPU user benchmark. I think 3 of those we'll look at. I did a bunch of different ones each time I made changes. And so the main star of the show really is not only the i7 10700K, but the Intel Extreme Tuning utility. So one of my things is always, hey, these games, it's hard to tell whether they really are improved with a high single core score, quad core score, or multi core score unless you start experimenting. And really, unless you have a unlocked chip, it's kind of the only way to do that. So, 2 things we're going to do in here, and we could do a lot more. Like we could really mess with these overclocks if we started messing with the voltages. But all I'm going to do is mess with the multipliers, the core multipliers in the video. So the way you do that, obviously you open the program. Under advanced tuning, we have the ability to change these, okay? Now the default starting from the bottom, 47, 47, 47, 47, 48, 49, 51, 51, okay? The other thing to do is once you make any kind of change in here, is to go perform CPU stress test, and in that case, this one passed, okay? So let's look at these one by one. So if I set these all back to default, that's what we're going to look at in the beginning here. And I have a bunch of things I'm going to show you. And some of you hate picture shows, and this is going to be somewhat of one after this. All right, so this is default like I talked about. I ran the benchmark, and the thing we're going to really concentrate on is this final overall, okay? 129.24, that's basically setting a baseline, okay? So anything after this, we hope to see the score going higher. So I'll leave this one up. Now, CPU user benchmark. Here's what it scored out at, and it allows you to kind of see some of the other hardware. There's the Z490 motherboard. Here's what we're talking here, score-wise. So a little above average, and mainly because these people over here are probably your ones that are using something besides a Z490 motherboard. All right, so hell, let's click on this. Let's see if I'm right. Nope, that guy's just got a bad score. But you can go in here and get an idea of some of the other benches and what's causing them to be bad. Now, there's your single core score, quad core, and the multi-core score. So we're going to use those hopefully to compare. A lot of you don't like user benchmark, and in some aspects I understand. Some, I don't. Um, I do like a lot of the other benchmarks, but if you're only getting one big score, it doesn't tell you the total story, right? Like Cinebench R20, when I run it, gives me this massive number if I'm strong over here, but doesn't necessarily correlate to better gaming. All right, so looks like we've got a PM 961. I don't know why it says SM, but you can see it's cranking decently, and then we've got this crappy Helix Mushkin Helix in here. Um, and then there's our RAM running at 3067. If I had a compatible motherboard, it would run at 3600. So just so you know. All right, moving on. Let's go look at the first multiplier change that we did. And in this case, we changed the defaults to be 51 multiplier all the way across. Okay, so when this thing's hitting, it's hitting at 5.1 gigahertz across all cores. Okay, now what did that do over here? It actually hurt our score. We went down. Okay, now I will say a true science experiment, I would do at least 3 runs of each of these and then average it out for you guys, but in this case I did not do that, so shame on me. You can shame me on that if you want. Alright, so where did I go from there? I then made some more adjustments. I said we'll go back to default and I'll just change the first 2 cores to 52. Now, whatever that would average out to for a core frequency, I don't know. You would think it would be somewhere between 4.7 and 5.2, right? Whatever that comes out to. So, boom. This is higher than our baseline, right? Our baseline, in case we forgot, which we 129.24. So we increased almost a half a frame per second. Definitely not noticeable. Where do we go from here? Let me close this one. From here, I made the first 3, set them to 552 multiplier. Okay. And we're going backwards. We're going the wrong way. So it didn't like that. You know, what was I trying to prove here? Good question. It wasn't a good idea. Didn't work. And then we came back with 5.3 or 53 on the first 2 cores and everything else default. And voila, we get into the 130. So we've gained almost a whole FPS. Now I can imagine if this correlated to Fortnite, when I'm up there in the 360s, just a default, that I should add 3 FPS if this was a similar program, right? So just keep that in perspective. So 130.21. So things are actually looking better. I'm going to leave this one up. Then what do we do here? We zoom in. The first 4 were bumped up 1, okay? So these are default. This was 48, became 49. This was 49, became 50. This was 51, became 52. This was 51, became 52. 130.32. What did we have a second ago? Ever so slight change, okay? Of course, you know, when you do things like I just did, the temperature is going to go up too with your CPU. So that's one thing I forgot to discuss, is make sure you have a premium CPU cooler before you start doing this crap. All right, so next I said, you know what, let's try something totally different. Let us do the first core at 53 multiplier, the rest of them at 51, and whoa, now we're in the 131s, right? Or were we in the 131s? No. So we jumped over 1 FPS just by making this change, okay? So it's like, wow, that's a pretty decent change. So we're over what, 2? We're over 2 FPS over the default. Okay. Now, finally, I saved the best for last. And you could fine tune this. This is the point where you start messing with some of the other multipliers. You could start reducing some of these guys just to